My dad wrote, "We are cutting all ties. Don't ever come back." My sister sent a heart. I responded, "I'll remove my name from every loan." By midnight, the family chat was screaming in all caps. My name is Myra Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and the text that shattered my family arrived on a Wednesday afternoon while I was hunched over my desk, trying to finish a report I was already 3 days late on. The fluorescent lights in my cubicle buzzed overhead, casting that sickly yellow glow that made everything feel slightly unreal. My turkey club sat half-eaten beside my keyboard, the lettuce already wilting. Then my phone screen lit up with my father's name. Gerald Bennett. 3 words appeared that would change everything. We are cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again. No explanation. No warning. Just that cold, clinical sentence delivered like a piece of spam mail. I stared at it, my coffee going cold in my hand, the bitter taste turning sour on my tongue. 5 minutes later, my older sister Vanessa reacted to the message with a heart emoji. A heart. Like Dad had just shared a funny meme or announced he was grilling burgers this weekend. I sat there in my grey cubicle, surrounded by the tap-tap-tapping of keyboards and the distant hum of the copy machine, and felt absolutely nothing. Not shock, not pain, just this strange, hollow numbness that settles in when you've been waiting for a car crash and it finally happens. So I typed back the only thing that mattered. I'll pull my name from all the loans tomorrow. That was it. No pleading, no questions, just the truth we'd all been dancing around for years. I hit send and waited. My phone started vibrating immediately. Messages flooded in like water through a cracked dam. First, my mother, Patricia, in frantic all caps. How dare you do this after everything we've sacrificed for you? Then Dad again. Don't twist this, Myra. You're being cruel and you know it. And Vanessa, always the family's star performer, the golden child who could do no wrong. You always loved being dramatic. Guess you finally got your spotlight, huh? I watched their words scroll across my screen like storm clouds gathering on a horizon I was no longer standing under. Not one of them mentioned the real reason I was done. Not one acknowledged the mountain of debt they'd quietly, systematically built in my name over the past 7 years. The business loan I'd co-signed for Dad's contracting company because he swore it was just temporary, just until the spring projects came through. The SUV I'd financed so Mom could rebuild her credit after her 3rd bankruptcy. The home equity line of credit I'd guaranteed because they couldn't afford the roof repairs. The utility bills I'd paid directly for 2 straight years because they were always just a little short, always just 1 more month away from getting back on their feet. I'd become their safety net, their fix-it person, their walking, talking credit score with a pulse. And the moment I'd mentioned wanting something for myself, moving in with my boyfriend Cameron, maybe finally going back to school for my master's degree, I'd transformed overnight into the villain of their story. I scrolled through the family group chat again, watching them rewrite history in real time. According to their version, I was ungrateful, selfish, cold-hearted. But the truth was so much simpler, so much more exhausting. I was just tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. When you spend years holding everyone else above water, you forget what it feels like to stand on solid ground yourself. You forget that your own oxygen mask matters. You become so used to the weight that you don't notice it anymore, until one day you look down and realize you can't remember the last time you weren't carrying someone else's burden. I took a slow, deliberate breath and closed my messages. Then I opened my banking app with trembling fingers. My checking account showed a decent balance, $3,200, but that number told a lie. It didn't show the $6,000 I'd paid toward their business loan last year. It didn't show the monthly car payment I'd been making for Mom for 18 months. It didn't show the hundreds of small emergencies I'd funded, the pharmacy co-pays, the overdue electric bills, the grocery runs when they were just a little short this week. If I added it all up, I'd probably given them close to $70,000 over the past 7 years. $70,000 I could have used for grad school, for a down payment on my own place, for the life I kept putting on hold because family comes first, right? That's what they'd always said. Family comes first. Except I was starting to realize I'd never actually been family to them. I'd been a resource. A tool. A credit line with a heartbeat. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake, anxiety clawing at my chest, trying to figure out how to juggle their bills with mine. The mornings I'd shown up to work exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep and too much coffee, pretending everything was fine. The dates I'd cancelled with Cameron because I needed to drive across town to help Dad with some emergency that always, somehow, required my credit card. Maybe this was what freedom looked like. Ugly and sudden and terrifying, but real. Across the office, my coworker Jade peered over the cubicle wall, her dark eyebrows knitted with concern. "Hey, you okay? You look like you just got some seriously bad news." I forced a smile that felt like plastic stretching across my face. "Something like that." She didn't push, just nodded in that understanding way people do when they sense you're holding something too heavy to unpack in a fluorescent-lit break room. "I'm here if you need to talk," she offered quietly. "Thanks," I managed. "I appreciate it. But I knew I wouldn't talk about it. Not yet. Maybe not ever." How do you explain to someone that your family just discarded you like a used credit card they'd maxed out? How do you admit that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally only loved what you could provide? That evening, I drove home in complete silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of my Honda's engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. My apartment, the small one-bedroom I'd been renting for 3 years, felt different when I walked in. The couch I'd bought because Mom said their old one was giving Dad back problems. The coffee table Vanessa had convinced me to get because it would look so much better in the family room, before she decided to keep it herself. Even my kitchen table had been a gift to them originally, until they decided they didn't actually want it and I'd had to find space for it in my cramped dining area. Every piece of furniture felt like a monument to my own stupidity, evidence of every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. I turned off my phone completely and sat on the edge of my bed, replaying my father's text in my mind. "We are cutting all ties." They thought it was punishment. They thought I'd come crawling back, apologizing for daring to want boundaries, begging them to let me back into their dysfunction. But all I felt was something I hadn't felt in years: relief. My hands shook slightly as I opened my laptop. I needed to do this now, while I still had the courage, while the numbness was still protecting me from the guilt I knew would try to creep in later. I started gathering everything. Every document, every email, every text message where they'd promised this was the last time, just one more favor, we'll pay you back next month. I found the scanned copy of the business loan, my signature right there next to Dad's, guaranteeing $28,000 for Bennett Contracting. I found the auto loan paperwork for Mom's Chevy Traverse, the one she'd insisted she needed because her old sedan wasn't reliable enough for her commute to her part-time job at the gift shop. I found the home equity line documents, the application where I'd listed my income and credit score to help them secure $15,000 for essential repairs. I highlighted every signature line with my cursor, saved every document with careful, methodical precision. The date, the amount, the institution. It felt mechanical, like I was building a case for a trial I hadn't realized was already over. Like I was finally becoming my own lawyer after years of being their defendant. By midnight, the family group chat was still exploding. They'd cycled through every stage: fury, indignation, guilt-tripping, and now they were in the bargaining phase. "Mom, you can't do this, sweetheart. We are family." "Dad, you don't understand the damage this will cause, Myra. You're throwing away everything we built together." "Vanessa, they can't get refinancing without your credit score, Myra. You're really going to screw us over like this? After everything?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to respond, to explain, to make them understand. But I'd spent 7 years explaining. 7 years trying to make them see that I was drowning under the weight of their choices. They'd never listened before. They weren't going to start now. Instead, I opened my email and started typing. "To whom it may concern, I'm writing to formally request removal of my name as co-signer on all outstanding loans effective immediately. Please find attached the relevant account numbers and documentation." I typed out another email to my insurance company, requesting cancellation of the auto policy on the vehicle registered under my name but driven exclusively by my mother. Each click of the mouse felt like taking a breath after being underwater too long. Each sent email felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost. At 3:17 in the morning, a final text from Dad cut through the darkness. "You're making a huge mistake, Myra." I stared at those words for a long time. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was making a mistake. But for the first time in 7 years, it would be my mistake. My choice. My life. I typed back, "Maybe. But it's mine to make." Then I closed my laptop, turned off my phone, and lay in the darkness, listening to the sound of my own breathing. The silence felt strange, almost foreign. No phone buzzing with emergencies. No panic about which bill was due. Just quiet. When I finally fell asleep, I didn't dream. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm went off, which almost never happened anymore. My body felt light in a way I couldn't quite explain, like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks and someone had finally cut the straps. But my mind felt heavy, weighed down by the reality of what I'd done, what I was about to do. I dressed carefully. Black slacks, white blouse, navy blazer. The kind of outfit that looked professional enough to hide the chaos underneath. The kind of armor that said I had my life together even when everything was falling apart. The drive to First National Bank took 20 minutes through morning traffic. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my thumbs pressing against the leather hard enough to leave impressions. Inside my messenger bag sat a folder I'd assembled with obsessive precision, color-coded tabs, every signature highlighted in yellow, every document organized by date and account number. The loan officer, a middle-aged man named Douglas with kind eyes and a receding hairline, blinked twice when I slid the folder across his desk. He opened it slowly, his expression shifting from polite interest to something like surprise as he flipped through the pages. "I'd like to remove myself as co-signer on all of these loans," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. He glanced up at me, then back down at the folder. "That's quite a list, Ms. Bennett." "I know." He continued reading, his lips pressing into a thin line as he absorbed the scope of what my family had tied to my name. The business loan, the car loan, the home equity line, even a renovation credit line I didn't remember approving, though there was my signature, right there in digital ink. "I'll need to initiate formal release requests," he said finally. "The process can take several days, possibly longer depending on the lender's requirements and whether the primary borrowers can qualify on their own." "That's fine. I understand." He studied me for a long moment, that peculiar expression people get when they're trying to decide if they should say what they're thinking. "Ms. Bennett, I have to ask, are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Family financial entanglements can be complicated. Sometimes people reconcile, and then families can destroy you too," I interrupted gently. "Not just support you." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or sympathy. He nodded once, stamped a form with more force than necessary, and handed me a stack of copies. The sound of that stamp echoed in the quiet office like a judge's gavel. "You should hear back within 5 to 7 business days," he said. I walked out into the morning sunlight, and it hit me with surprising force, how simple it had been. Years of financial manipulation, of guilt trips and obligations, erased with a few signatures and some stamped forms. The weight I'd been carrying for so long was finally, officially, not mine anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 11 new notifications. I didn't look. Instead, I drove to Lincoln Park, found a spot under an old oak tree, and just sat there, breathing. Really breathing, maybe for the first time in years. I thought about Cameron, about how he'd held me last night without asking questions, his arms wrapped around me while I cried into his shoulder. Just quiet support. No judgment, no demands, just presence. That's what love was supposed to feel like, I realized. Not like drowning. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt like a soldier stumbling off a battlefield, alive but shaken, free but not quite sure how to exist without the constant threat of incoming fire. That evening, I finally looked at my phone. 3 voicemails waiting. I pressed play on the first one. Mom's voice came through, cracking with sobs that sounded almost theatrical. "Myra, please. You don't understand what you're doing to us. We're your parents. We just got upset. You can't abandon us over one argument. Call me back. Please, honey. We need to talk about this." Voicemail 2. Dad's voice, tight with barely controlled fury. "This is completely over the line. You're hurting your mother. Do you understand that? You're killing her with this selfishness. Call us back right now." Voicemail 3. Vanessa, her voice dripping with venom disguised as concern. "Wow, Myra. Just, wow. I guess you're really proud of yourself. Huh? Hope Cameron knows you'll throw him away too when he stops being useful. That's who you are now. I listened to all 3 messages twice. Then I deleted every single one. That night, I stayed at Cameron's apartment on the east side of town. He lived in a quiet complex surrounded by maple trees, the kind of place where you could actually hear birds in the morning instead of sirens. We made spaghetti carbonara together, drank cheap red wine from Target, and watched a movie I couldn't remember 5 minutes after it ended. At one point, he paused the screen and turned to me. "You're thinking too hard. I can literally see the wheels turning." I tried to smile. "Sorry. It's a habit." He reached over and took my hand, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. "You know you don't have to explain anything to me, right? You can just exist. Just breathe. Just be here." And for the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders drop. I felt the tension in my jaw release. I felt something that might have been peace. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For not making me feel guilty for surviving." He pulled me closer, and we sat there in the quiet, the movie forgotten, just breathing together in the blue light of his living room. 2 days later, I was at work when our receptionist, Angela, sent me a message through the internal chat. "Someone here to see you. Middle-aged woman, nice coat, won't give her name. Says it's personal." My stomach dropped like a stone in water. I already knew who it was before I reached the lobby. Mom sat in one of the waiting area chairs, her hands folded neatly in her lap like she was there for a job interview. She dressed up, black slacks, cream blouse, her Goodwill coat with the pearl buttons. Her hair was styled, her makeup perfect. She looked like she was playing the role of concerned mother in a made-for-TV movie. "Myra," she said, standing quickly. "Sweetheart, we need to talk." "I'm at work, Mom." "I'll be quick, I promise." She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your father and I, we overreacted. You know how families fight. Sometimes emotions run high. We understand you needed to make a statement, to have your little moment. But now it's time to fix this before it goes too far." Her voice trembled just enough to sound sincere to anyone listening. But I'd heard this performance before. I knew all her lines by heart. "There's nothing to fix," I said quietly. She opened her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were photocopies, documents I recognized immediately. Every loan I'd co-signed, every insurance form I'd guaranteed, even my tax returns from last year. "We consulted with a lawyer," she said softly, urgently. "He said you might still be legally obligated for some of these debts. There are loopholes, technicalities. You could get into real legal trouble if you don't handle this correctly, honey. But if you just cooperate with us, we can make this all go away. We can pretend this little episode never happened." I stared at the photocopies, at my own handwriting, my own signatures now being weaponized against me like shackles. "How did you get these documents?" Her lips twitched. "Don't be so dramatic. We just made copies when you still lived with us. We're your parents. We kept everything for your own protection." The air felt thin suddenly, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the lobby. "We're done here, Mom." "Myra, wait." But I was already walking away, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I could sense her eyes burning into my back as I pushed through the security door and headed straight for my desk. My manager, Christine, glanced over the cubicle wall, eyebrows raised in question. "Everything okay?" "Family stuff," I managed, forcing breath into my lungs. "Just family." She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. The moment I was alone, I opened my laptop with shaking hands and started changing everything. Bank passwords, credit card logins, email security questions. Every single access point they might have to my financial life, I sealed off like I was boarding up windows before a hurricane. That night, Cameron found me sitting on the floor of his living room, laptop balanced on my knees, exhaustion written into every muscle of my body. He crouched beside me, his hand gentle on my shoulder. "They came to your job, didn't they?" I nodded, unable to speak. He didn't ask for details. He just carefully took the laptop from my hands, closed it, and set it aside. "They don't get to live rent-free in your head anymore, Myra. You hear me? You've already paid them enough. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a shaky exhale. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, he said. But you're doing it anyway. That's what matters. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain drumming against the windows. For a second, it felt peaceful, like the world was washing itself clean. Then I saw the silhouette through the curtain, someone standing on the front porch. I froze. Cameron got there first, pulling the door open halfway before I could move. Vanessa stood there in designer jeans and a leather jacket, her hair perfectly styled despite the rain. She smiled that practiced smile of hers, the one she used when she wanted something. Morning, she chirped. Can I talk to my sister? Alone. No, I said from behind Cameron. Her smile flickered. Mom and Dad are a complete mess, Myra. Debt collectors calling non-stop. The business line of credit is frozen. We can't even buy groceries because you shut down the joint account. You've made your point. Now stop. I crossed my arms. How did you find me? She tilted her head, smug. Easy. You tagged Cameron in a photo last month. I scrolled through his friend list until I recognized your building. Took like 10 minutes. My stomach twisted. They'd turned stalking into a strategy. Vanessa, I said slowly, carefully. You need to leave. She gave a little laugh. You think Cameron's going to stick around once he sees the mess you left behind? Once he realizes what kind of person you really are? That was it. Get off this porch. Now. She blinked like she hadn't expected actual resistance. Then she tried again, her voice going sweet and poisonous. One bridge loan, Myra. Just this month. Then we're even. Goodbye, Vanessa. When I closed the door, it felt like slamming a book shut on a chapter one should have ended years ago. Inside, my pulse raced, but my voice stayed calm. I turned to Cameron. They're not going to stop. Then make it impossible for them to start again. I sat down at his kitchen table with my laptop and started cutting every remaining tie. The joint credit card account, closed. The shared family cell phone plan, disconnected. The small personal loan I'd given them 2 years ago, formally forgiven in writing so they could never use it as leverage again. By the time I finished, there was nothing left connecting us. No shared accounts, no co-signed papers, no hooks they could use to reel me back in. That night, I told Cameron everything. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every time they'd made me feel selfish for wanting to breathe. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, he said quietly, I'm proud of you. Proud? I asked, half laughing through tears. For what? Cutting off my own family. No, he said. For choosing yourself. Finally. And in that moment, sitting in his small kitchen with rain tapping against the windows, I realized he was right. Because maybe freedom wasn't about anger or revenge. Maybe it was just about survival. About choosing to build a life where you weren't constantly drowning in someone else's debt. 3 months passed. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and longer days. I got promoted at work, senior analyst with a corner desk and a salary that finally felt like mine. Cameron and I moved into a new apartment together, one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a balcony overlooking the city. One morning, I found an old photo at the bottom of a moving box. Me at 16, standing in front of the Bennett house, smiling at whoever held the camera. Dad had written on the back, our glue. You keep us together. I stared at that word. Glue. Glue doesn't last forever. It cracks when you stretch it too far. And sometimes, when it finally breaks, it sets you free. I tucked the photo into a drawer, not as a wound but as a reminder. Then I walked out onto the balcony where Cameron was making coffee, the morning sun painting the city gold. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, meaning it for the first time. I really am. Because they'd wanted to cut all ties. And I'd finally let them.